At the State of the Union earlier this month, when, as you know, many of the more than 80 Democratic Congresswomen, almost 90, were suffragette white, paying homage to the women who paved the way for them to be there. From the fight to give women the right to vote to the push for the Equal Rights Amendment, a guarantee of civil rights regardless of gender, which passed in Congress in 1972, but still awaits ratification nearly 50 years later. The ongoing battle for those rights and the women behind it are at the center of two new books by local authors. Mr. President, How Long Must We Wait? Alice Paul, Woodrow Wilson, and the Fight for the Right to Vote. That's by Tina Cassidy. And She the People, A Graphic History of Uprising, Breakdowns, Setbacks, Revolts, and Enduring Hope on the Unfinished Road to Women's Equality by Jen Deaderick. They join me now. Congratulations to both of you. Can I start with your book? In the subtitle, Woodrow Wilson and Alice Paul. My guess is most people at home, I hope, have heard of Woodrow Wilson. I'm betting almost nobody has heard of Alice Paul. Who was she?
Alice Paul was a suffragist who believed that women deserved the vote, but her approach was different from everybody else's in the women's movement up until that time. She really believed that we needed a federal amendment, that asking each state if they would please give women the vote would not work, and so that's why we have the 19th Amendment and why women have been able to vote since 1920.
And she was a direct action kind of person,
Oh,
correct?
she was. She was the first person to protest outside the White House, and she organized the first Women's March in 1913. The day before Wilson was inaugurated.
You know, I was really proud of myself before I started reading your book because I thought I knew about Woodrow Wilson and the 19th Amendment, because all I think I'd ever learned in school is he made some speech after one chamber voted for it and the other hadn't, proudly saying he supported it, but I apparently missed part of the story.
Well, the big part of the story is that she browbaited him for more than 7 years.
Including in one-on-one meetings
Oh,
with
absolutely.
the president, right?
She knocked on that Oval Office door many times, back at a time when you could walk into the Oval Office. In fact, Wilson had an open door policy for the federal government then.
I love that.
It's amazing.
Well, there's a number of links between your two books. One of them is Alice
Of
Paul.
course.
So she leads the fight for the 19th Amendment.
Right.
Women have the right to vote, but that's not enough for her. She moves on to another proposed amendment, which would be
the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yeah.
Then at the time called the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, when she first proposed it, in honor of that. And, the idea that women should have full citizenship and guaranteed full citizenship.
And so she did. This is 1920, correct?
Right.
Well,
1923 is the Equal Rights
Exactly.
Amendment.
Okay, but it was 50-plus years later after she started the fight on the ERA that, of all people, Richard Nixon signed. And I learned in your book, which I did not, she was still alive.
She was.
At
and
that
so
time.
She'd been continuously pushing for it. It actually had entered the platforms of both parties in the 1940s. And that was because of her, because she was still pushing for the Equal Rights Amendment.
Alice Paul was a Republican, by the way.
She was, so I didn't know.
Well, the Republicans were very much, they were in favor of the Equal Rights Amendment before the Democrats were, because it wasn't sure whether labor protections could be included if there was an Equal Rights Amendment.
So you look at the whole history, you through a much broader lens. You focus on a particular piece of history, you're focusing
1776
on the whole
to now.
So I want to disclose something to you, which I hope is good news
for
potential readers. You probably don't. Do you know how many women you profile in your first chapter? I do, 20.
Wow.
12 of them I'd never heard of.
Oh, good.
Only 8. Abigail Adams, and who did I wrote down? Harriet Tubman, Mary Wollstonecraft, in part because of another local author, Charlotte Gordon, who wrote a great piece about Wollstonecraft and her daughter, Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing from your perspective, that I know that little, or is that a horrible thing?
I don't want to judge you.
Well, you can't judge. I wouldn't ask if I didn't want you to judge me.
I think that's true. I think part of what I do, and I try in my book also, I don't name a lot of the men. I'll sort of refer to them as so-and-so's husband.
We know everything about the men.
Because we know about the men. And I think that I wanted to have this be, give the idea that women are just woven into the history of the United States, and that we're just there. You know, that the idea, when I first started the book, I was thinking about having to make sure also to include, black women. And then realizing, they're already there. I don't have to include them. Right. Everyone's just there, but we don't talk about them as much.
So let's fast forward 100 years from the first success, the 19th Amendment. Here's Donald Trump at the State of the Union.
We also have more women serving in Congress than at any time before. That's great. Very great. And congratulations. That's great.
That was a great moment. Let's face it. So how are we doing 100 years? We have essentially a quarter of Congress,
right,
which I guess is cause for celebration, even though I don't think it's half. It's a quarter.
Right, it's like
so
the
how
little
are we
crumbs.
doing 100 years later?
Well, I mean, one of the great things is was this last election, finally we had almost the turnout for the midterms that we have for presidential elections. And because one of my things about my book is like, I talk about Alice Paul, but I also talk about all the women who did all of this work behind the scenes that meant that when the 19th Amendment got to Tennessee and Harry Burns was supposed to vote against it, he got a letter from his mother saying you should vote for it. And that was because she'd been approached over the years by, so all of the behind the scenes work is so important, and the little offices taking not just in Congress, but people in state legislatures and all of that. So I think that maybe people are getting a better idea of what democracy is.
Well, let's go to something where we're maybe not doing as well. You write in your book, in March 2017, Nevada surprised the rest of America by suddenly ratifying the ERA, 35 years after the deadline had passed. Hey, better late than never, right? Then, lo and behold, a few months later, Illinois followed suit. Hurrah for the land of Lincoln. There was a key vote in Virginia today. Some people say it's not even necessary. There's somebody who's in your book who thinks it is. Here's Justice Ginsburg.
If you ask anyone who was in Congress at the time the 14th Amendment was sent to the state, does this mean that women will be citizens of equal stature to men? The answer would be, of course not.
She thinks we need the ERA. The majority of delegates in Virginia don't, correct?
Well, it was, the ERA was defeated in Virginia today, actually. Yeah. So this is
and that was the one state short.
That's right, one state short of 38 states necessary for ratification. However, I wouldn't say that they didn't have the votes in Virginia. Right. The Senate passed the ERA. They had the votes in the House of Delegates, but the Speaker of the House there would not let it come up for a vote. So,
and that'll hinge. It's like the House of Delegates in Virginia hinged on a coin toss just a couple of years ago.
That is correct. About who would control the majority.
Right, because it was a 50-50 split.
Can I end with the next chapter of maybe your book and maybe the subject of yours?
Yeah.
One of the stupid things that was said about Obama's election is racism is over now, and I think most of us would agree it's not.
No.
However, if we did elect a woman in 2020, I wouldn't say sexism is over, and there were equal rights. That we only have a minute left. That would be a huge thing, not just for that one woman, right?
It was a huge thing, even just that Hillary Clinton was a major candidate. The fact that all these women are now, we have 4 women running, we have 5 women, I forget the other one. 5 women running for president, and we have all of these women who ran for office, and we had I think that she really did break open a glass ceiling in ways that, just from doing it.
What happens if a woman gets sworn in early 21?
We're drinking a lot of champagne.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll end there. Jen, congratulations.
Thank
Great
you,
book. And yours
Thank
is
you.
too.
Thanks
really
so much.
Great.
Appreciate
They're both
it.
terrific. The books again are Mr. President, How Long Must We Wait? Alice Paul, Woodrow Wilson, and the Fight for the Right to Vote by Tina Cassidy. And She the People, A Graphic History of Uprisings, Breakdowns, Setbacks, Revolts, and Enduring Hope on the Unfinished Road to Women's Equality by Jen Deaderick.